working with the kids because they are our future. And you take and let disciple women mentor, you let disciple men mentor, and you find a local project that they can do. And it could be cleaning up Aunt Martha's yard, because she can't do it anymore. And we try to do that the first year. And then the second year, we try to carry them somewhere in the region. Now, we were blessed/cursed to have Katrina where we could carry people to New Orleans. But the idea is you start them locally, you carry them out into the region, and you're working toward that senior trip where you carry them overseas so they're in the Dominican Republic or wherever, so they can see how part of the rest of the world lives. And if we can continue to do that, then, in my opinion, we're going to kind of get two birds with one stone. But you're going to be getting kids more involved, because these kids, the one thing I learned with 5,000 volunteers in New Orleans is the kids love to do mission. And they stood there and told us, we used to do a thing at night called, "Where did you see God today?" And they would always respond. And one of the kids said to me one night,
I just want to let everybody know you've got another 15 minutes or so I know it's really good conversation. Keep it going for a little bit, but I want to let you know 15 minutes.
They said, "Brother Vance, we don't want to hear any more about Jesus." And I said, okay, you need to open that one up a little bit. They said, "We don't care about talking about Jesus. We want to do Jesus." And so what that said, I think to me, and I know to a lot of people that I talk to like here, they're screaming out that we want to be. But we don't want to just sit around and talk about it. We want to go out and touch somebody's lives. And so if in this global mission thing, we connect, and the time I spent with Bob and Felix, this is what it's about when we talk. It's about how do we connect the local church to the region, and how do we connect the region to global ministries, and connect them to all these countries out here that also went. And so we're sitting in the Dominican Republic, and I tell that story about the local, regional, and national, and one of the guys on the council said, yeah, and then he told me about what they're doing, how they want to bring some of their kids over here so they can see what we're doing, and so now all of a sudden we've got something to talk about of how we're going to make an exchange that will be meaningful to everybody, not just to us, but to them. Yeah.
You're building relationships, but you're also, the global ministries, we would say, how is this a part of our DNA?
Yeah.
And that's what I hear you talking about, how these kids are going through this process, and then all of a sudden it's a part of who they are and how they understand church and how they understand work in the world and in their local congregation.
And you said it, the youth is key to it. They're ready to be involved. You just have to, let them know what they can do and give them a little bit of direction. But they like you mentioned before, the youth, they said, give them the instruments. You said that. And when we went through the interpreter training back in Cleveland in October, every member of every church that was there, we had to come up with an action plan for our church to become a global mission church. And everybody I talked to, part of their action plan was get the youth involved. It's usually step number 2. First, get the buy-in from the pastor. Number 2, get the youth involved. And then the others will fall in line.
And one thing we learned when we had a mission center down in New Orleans, and I had a bunkhouse. And we would bring a youth group down, and I would get the disciple men to come with them as chaperones. That was the initial objective. But what happened is you throw the youth and the old people together where they got to eat, sleep, and live with each other for about a week. The men came out of there. The kids automatically, anytime you take kids to the right kind of camp, they're going to come away with a transformative experience. These men came out with tears in their eyes saying, I've been around these kids since they were babies, and I don't even know who they are. But now I know. And I'll never forget an old guy from an elder statesman from Fort Smith, from Fort Smith, Arkansas, that said, every night I turn the TV on and all I see is all this bad stuff about the youth. He said, they need to come and see our kids. They need to come and see what our kids are willing to do if we just ask them and help them a little bit. And I think if we're smart enough to do what you're saying, recognize that that's it, and then bring it local, take it regional, and then take it international, then we're not going to just do what Global Missions wants to do. We're going to help our churches. And that's the objective.
That's right.
Yeah.
The missional church is going to grow. Any other kind of church is not.
I'm sold.
First thing I'd say, the second response to that very real tension is, and this is a reality that a lot of more established congregations live with, is that we can have worship that is full of theological integrity and full of theological depth. And this is where I think sometimes things become really difficult, is that we can have those things together, but say the sanctuary is full of people only in their 70s or 80s, when someone who is 25, who loves progressive theology every bit as much as those in their 70s and 80s love progressive theology, when they step into that place, they just feel like a fish out of water. There's nothing wrong with what's going on in that setting. The worship can be very good, full of depth, full of authenticity, grounded in progressive theology that those who are 70 and those who are 25 are drawn to. But whenever you feel like a fish out of water, you wonder where you would fit in. I mean, it's kind of like, I've talked about it'd be like my dad going to a Justin Bieber concert. I mean, it's like he just wouldn't feel comfortable. So that's a struggle we don't know what to do with. And so just in our particular context, what our folk started to say was, what if we created something just different? We recognize that maybe it's something we wouldn't necessarily be drawn to ourselves, but it's a place that folks might find, what's the word I'm looking for, quite transformative, and they might feel as if they belong. But that's the politically incorrect response, the latter response.
Well, no, I'm just reflecting on experience based on all what you're talking about. Two different factors that have been evolving. One was, and this is very helpful because what you're describing, I'm looking at some things that have developed with us over the last year or so that, as you were describing, I said, wait a minute, we've been doing that. One was building a concrete response opportunity into the way we do our sign-in card. So we had developed a pattern of, and lifting it up each week of encouraging. It's usually to help with food pantry on schedule night or whatever project underway, emphasizing there are hands-on involvement opportunities that we encourage people to make response to, and it's also placed in the offering. The other, I mentioned the two services in the kind of eclectic worship environment. Our earlier service, we had developed a more, somewhat more emergent type prayer time that involves lighting of candles and sentence prayers and prayer stations sort of approach. And we've been dealing with some concerns about our major service, which is the higher attended one, more traditional, older audience in general. And the primary piece for that we pulled together has been, since you've talked about, the response time following the sermon, rather than the awkward place where it had been at the end of the service with the traditional invitation hymn, inviting varieties of response. What this continues to keep me thinking, I mean, a few weeks ago it was the cold drink of water, and we had bottled water up there, and we invited people as a response for them to come take a bottle of water with the understanding that that's for you to give to something, to share the cold cup of water. We've got one coming up in a couple of weeks where we're emphasizing our adopted school relationship, and it's going to be, the name of a teacher or faculty or administrative person, and I'm going to take the card and become the prayer partner. I'm just what it's generating is, as I'm thinking, is in terms of worship planning and design, does that start to become an ultimate criteria that, as I look into any service, what is the obvious tangible response that
something very concrete. I mean, that's fantastic. I'm reminded just briefly, Jim Wallace says that altar calls go back to whenever evangelists were signing up folks to work for abolition. You know, and so come forward. You know, let's go do the work of God. Those tangible things, concrete things, I think are vital and essential.
Our pastor encourages people to give testimony at the altar call of where God has been in their life this week.
Yeah, yeah.
Who plans it? Who's involved in the planning?
Emily does a lot of it, but with our musicians and then a handful of folks from the congregation that are just enjoy doing it. It's kind of their thing. They'll throw around different ideas. We come up with a lot of bad ideas, you know, and so it's good to, you know, kind of filter through them and really kind of like, well, this might really work. And sometimes stuff doesn't work, and you're disappointed. But sometimes stuff works that you don't think is going to be great, and it's amazing.
We built our sanctuary as a multi-purpose facility, and it didn't work because we tried it a few times. People didn't want to party in their place where they worship, and so we ended up building a community hall.
One thing that we do is we have round tables, you know, in fellowship hall for fellowship things, but that's where we continue to worship that way. We don't set up chairs. They just sit around tables. So like when we pass communion, they're passing it around the table, and we've done a lot of liturgy around serving each other and different ways of communing that way. And another thing, when someone comes in, it's very obvious if you have a visitor, and we've tried to get it across to everybody that if you see a new person, it's your responsibility to go and invite them to come and sit at your table and introduce them around, because if you're new and you walk into a situation like that, it's very threatening. I mean, which one of those round tables do I go sit at? And do they have assigned seats? You know, that kind of thing. And so we're working on the evangelism. It's everybody's responsibility to greet and to integrate and that kind of thing.
I love that. It reminds me of what Peter Rollins says. He's an emerging writer, that one of my favorites. And he says sometimes the pastor has to refuse to be a pastor.
Exactly.
So the people
Have to do
of
it.
God will do the yes.
And we had a young couple, because most of our people are like 60, 70, 80 and on up. But we had a new couple join, and they're in their mid-20s. They've been married 7 months. They love our church, and we thought we might lose them because we didn't have any other people their age. And they said, "Oh, we love this church. Everybody's so welcoming and loving, and it's like having all these mothers and fathers and grandfathers, you know." And we're getting them involved in it, like to do liturgy or to help with property or do different things. But I don't think you can assume that just because somebody's young, they might not find a home there, because they were looking for the welcome and feeling and the relationship.
Yeah.